In this video, we're going to go over the macronutrient analysis assignment. So you've spent the first half of the semester analyzing, collecting data. Same 3 days. We're only using our 3-day average. So you've collected your food diaries. We've edited those and fixed them so they're accurate. Then you created the nutrient averages calculations with the same 3 days. And now we're going to begin to analyze the data you've collected. In the past, for some assignments, I allow resubmissions. But for the analysis portion of the project, there will be no resubmissions allowed. Therefore, you need to make sure that you understand the data that was collected, and now you're able to interpret that data. That is the goal of this assignment and the next assignment after. So I'm just going to go over this assignment, what it looks like, what types of questions it has about macronutrients, and then how to use the live Cronometer reports, food diaries, to complete this assignment. This is the assignment itself. I have it in Word or an RTF version. Remember, Canvas does not accept pages, so don't do it on a pages file type unless you do it and then submit it as a PDF. What I've asked you to do is use the averages that you've created and was already calculated for you, remember? So you didn't have to calculate anything. The totals and averages were already calculated. For this, we're using the average. So every question will say, what was your average carbohydrate intake for the 3 days? That is already done and calculated, and we made sure those were accurate. Just a refresher, this was your nutrient averages. It's just a sample that I filled in with some random data. So carbohydrates, day 1, day 2, day 3, totaled, and then average. So now we're looking at this average column. Every response you give should have, if it has 2 decimal points, then you're using 2 decimal points in your answer. There's no rounding. Okay, back to the assignment. So the first couple of questions are about carbohydrate intake, all carbohydrates that I'm interested in, like your total grams that you had compared to the AMDR. If you don't know what AMDR is, go back to chapter 1. It'll tell you the AMDRs for all macronutrients. We look at sugar, added sugar, and total sugar. I'm really interested in more added sugar, but some of you are actually really good and don't eat a lot of added sugar, so I'm okay with you using total sugar amounts. So I did just put sugar because your food diary will have sugar and added sugar. I give some screenshots on where to find things, but I'll also go over it in this video. Fiber, very important. And then we move on to dietary fat. We move on to protein as well. And there's some calculations you have to do for protein. Things that you should know on how to use the live Cronometer food diary. Remember, you use the same exact dates that I graded, reviewed. You use for your nutrient averages the same 3 days. We're not adding new ones. So you would find your first day. And for example, I tell you, okay, of these 3 days, list the 3 highest fiber sources, one from each day. So I would go to my day 1 and let's say fiber. So notice if I hover over the nutrient, it will give some more information about it. So this is an interactive report. It is, if you hover over the percentage, you'll see that in this case, 3 foods listed in order of the highest to the lowest for fiber. So for example, it says that on day 1, my first day that I tracked, I had a Subway sandwich and it had 4 grams of fiber. So I would enter that in my analysis. For day 1, let's go down to fiber. Source of fiber, I would put Subway sandwich, grams of fiber, 4. Now day 2. So then I would go back to my Cronometer app and I'll find day 2. Notice my fiber was really low on day 2. We'll pretend this is day 2. And if I hover over the percentage, it says I had a banana, and that was the highest on day 2. That was 2.3 grams. So I'm going to go back to this and type in banana, 3.2 grams. So the first one, and notice it just says enter. I need your responses to be in blue or red. So Subway sandwich, and it was 4 grams. And then banana at 2.3 grams. And then I would go to day 3 and do the same thing. Now, what if each day I had a banana and it was listed as the highest? Do not repeat foods. Find the next one. So I'm not going to put, oh, I also had a banana on day 3 and it also had 2.3 grams. That was the highest. Then list your second highest. Okay? So do not repeat foods. So I'm going to say, no, this is wrong. I would then go to my third or second highest food for day 3 and then type it in here. I want you, the purpose, the goal is to identify what foods contributed fiber to your diet. You already know a banana contributed fiber, so I don't need you to know it again. I want you to see what else contributed to my fiber intake. Okay? So the intention is that we're learning what foods provide fiber. It's not necessarily for the purpose of, well, banana was the highest on day 3, but we already learned that, so let's find something else we can learn about. If it's Subway sandwich, again, don't repeat it. So find another food that was high. There's kind of gathering the data to see like, oh, where is this number coming from? How did I get such a good number on my fiber intake? Well, this is, you get to see what foods. And then what foods should you add? So if your fiber was really low, because you're going to tell me what was your fiber intake. Let's say your fiber from the averages assignment, so let's say it was, we'll use this, fiber was 21.8 grams, 86%. So in here, I'm going to put 21.8 grams at 26%. Remember, that was already calculated for you. That's what percent DRI or goal means. I didn't quite get to 100. In this case, I put 90% is pretty darn good. So if you got 90%, that's an A, and that's pretty good. But in this case, it was not 90, it was 86. So I have to list foods that I need to add to my diet to increase my fiber intake. Notice I said do not use food groups. Examples of food groups, you just say, I'm going to eat more veggies, I'm going to eat grains, I'm going to eat fruit. No, I want to know which fruit, what veggies, what grains do you think have fiber? And if you don't know, then you need to refer to the book. I provide the chapter readings. You need to use Cronometer. You can look up what foods have a high amount of fiber. So you want to do some research to figure out, is what I'm saying accurate? I would not put, well, I need to increase my fiber, so therefore I'm going to add in broccoli. And by the way, everything should be in complete sentences. So it should say, to improve my fiber intake, I will add broccoli, whole wheat bread at breakfast. I like to see when you would do it. And maybe you're going to add some raspberries to your yogurt snack. Okay? There's 3 foods rich in fiber or contains fiber, can improve your intake, and they are not food groups. All right, so if we go down, it's sort of the same thing. I ask you what was your AMDR for fat, and then you have to say, were you within the range? Well, that means you have to know what the AMDR is, and you have to be able to use your average calculation sheet to figure out what the range was or what you had. So in this case, we had fat grams, 45, and you were 17% of your calories came from fat. That's what I'm looking at here. Remember, we're looking at the average column. So 17% was your average for total fat. The AMDR for fat, I won't tell you, but this is less than that. So that means your diet is relatively low in fat. Now, some people say, isn't that good? Well, there's a range for a reason, and fat provides nutrients, and fat provides a feeling of fullness and flavor and richness to foods. So we do have a minimum because you need omega-3s, the essential fatty acids, and 6s. You need vitamin D and A and all our fat-soluble vitamins. So I would say this is low. And then you have to analyze that part. Same thing with saturated fat. I ask you what percent of your calories came from saturated fat. You would enter that here. And that's provided as well. This asks about omega-3s and 6s. So you're going to put what your average was and what your percent of goal average was for each. And then total fat. What were your 3 highest sources and how much saturated, mono, and poly came from each? Let me show you that on the Cronometer food diary. Here's your total fat, and this is for the first day, and it shows that the Cinnabon was 37 grams. So that is what you're going to enter for the first day. So the cinnamon roll was 37. Let's make sure I don't have a decimal, 0.0. Okay. And then it says, how much saturated fat did that cinnamon roll have? To find the saturated fat, I'm going to go back and hover over saturated. And it shows that the cinnamon roll was 16 grams of saturated. It shows that mono cinnamon roll is not here, so you put not available, NA, and poly not available, NA. So you're going to ask, wait, this doesn't total up because saturated fat, it listed 16. So I'm going to put 16. But this, there was no mono. Oh, I asked for 0 if not available and 0. You should already know why there was no mono or poly in the report. That's because it's voluntary for food companies to provide the grams for mono and poly. So this may not add up to 37, which was the total. But sometimes they do. So being voluntary, they could highlight, well, wait, although our fat was high, a lot of it comes from these healthier fats, and we want to market that, so we do include it. But sometimes it's low, and so they don't, and it's voluntary, and that requires a little more work, so they decide not to, and it's just not available. So in the instructions, I did say enter 0 if unavailable, poly if unavailable, meaning the total's not going to add up. It's a very common question that I get. The last part is the protein. This is the protein section. You will have to do some math, and I know math can be a little overwhelming for some students. Take your time, ask for help, but I just want to kind of give you some examples of what to do in this section. Calculate your weight in kilograms. That's the first step because your protein intake is actually dependent on your weight. We're going to calculate the RDA for protein that you're going to use. So I'm going to do this example and I have my calculator with me. Let's say I weigh, that keeps coming up. Let's say I weigh 150 pounds. In order to figure out my kilograms, I divide my pounds by 2.2. Notice I'm showing my work, so I divide by 2.2, and that means I am 68.18 kilograms. So I've just done the math. I know how much my weight is in kilograms. I do not want to see RDA for protein using pounds because that's the whole purpose of me having you calculate kilograms is so that we're using the same units. There are examples of what RDA you can use. So RDA for protein for adults is based on activity level. If you consider yourself sort of a sedentary person, an inactive person, or low activity, you will use 0.8 grams for every kilo. If you are active, use 1. If you consider yourself an athlete, use 1.2 to 1.8. Select the RDA that matches your activity level because you're going to use this in this calculation. I am going to say that I am active. And active individuals use 1.0. So I'm going to take my kilograms, 68.18 kilograms, and multiply it by 1.0 gram per kilo. And that equals, well, 1 times any number is the number itself. So I need 68.18 grams of protein per day. That's what I need. Now, let's take a look and see how many grams did I average? So how many am I actually taking in? And I would go to my nutrient averages and I look at protein and it says 51.3. So my response here is the number of grams that I averaged was 51.3 grams. Over the 3 days, that was my average. How many grams am I getting per kilo? I will take the grams, my intake, 51.3 grams, and divide it by my weight. I weighed 68.18 kilos. That means if I take intake divided by my weight, 68.18, that equals 0.75 grams per kilogram. Now, is that enough? Well, I used 1.0 and I'm only getting 0.75, so you have to analyze, are you getting enough protein? Do you take a supplement? If you do, enter that information here. Okay, so that is the macronutrient analysis. Any questions? If you have any questions, feel free to email me